Episode number 202 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. On today's episode, I'm going to be talking about a topic that is actually near and dear to my heart, something that always gets me excited to talk about, and that is the power of belief. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. So in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the power of belief, something that I get very excited to talk about because it's personally has changed my life in so many different ways. I may have talked about this before, but one book that really changed my life, and I'm actually listening to it because you can find it for free on YouTube. I'm listening to it in the background while I'm browsing through other things, and it's called The Power of the Subconscious Mind, and that is by Joseph Murphy. It is hands down one of the most amazing books. It's a life-changing book. It's one of those books that you can really, truly say can change your life. You know, there's many books that people read. They're like, okay, interesting. Even if it's really, really fascinating and can definitely influence your life in one way or another, it's great. But some books are life changers. And that is one that I consider a life changer. Completely changed my life. So as I start talking about belief, I want to start first talking about this book and how it changed my life, because it is a really great book that describes the mind. It describes the mind in such a simplistic way, and it really works. Like, the stuff that was in this book really works. And I'm going to share really what I got out of it and how it changed my life and how I saw the things that I implemented really changed my life. And it really comes down to the power of belief. Like, what is it that you believe in? And this book in particular talks about really the conscious and the subconscious mind. And then, very similar to what I learned when I was studying hypnotherapy, is that you have the conscious mind, which is pretty much your guard. It's the mind that you really have control over, you're aware of. It's in the forefront, and it could be the guard. It's the decision maker. It's basically what you are controlling from moment to moment and what you can actually pay attention to as you're in life and awake. And versus the subconscious mind, which controls your autonomic nervous system, basically your heart being able to beat, your ability to breathe, and then also beliefs. In, deep-seated beliefs that are kind of sitting in the background. And if you think about a computer, it's actually very similar. It's interesting how man will design something that is really reflective of how they operate as well. And there are definitely things in the computer that you can see. You can see folders, and you can actually access the internet and choose what you're doing from moment to moment. But behind the scenes of all of that, there needs to be some coding and some intelligence and some formulas that make that work. And it's this mumbo jumbo that most of us, unless we're really understanding the ins and outs of computers, we're really not going to understand what that means. It's another language, really, of its own. So that is kind of like the subconscious mind. It's like the behind the scenes that make us tick. And it's really what's inside of our personality, or kind of behind the scenes, that impacts what our likes, dislikes, our triggers, our tendencies, our habits, and our personality, really. Joe Dispenza talks about that. He breaks it down. He talks about repeating something over and over again. At first it becomes a habit, then it becomes a temperament, and then over time it becomes a personality. So personality is something that shapes itself over time through our experiences and what we start to believe in. And really what it comes down to is repetition. So anything that you repeat over and over again eventually becomes autopilot. It gets stored in the subconscious mind. It's something that the brain knows, okay, this is something that we do a lot. Okay. And the way Joseph Murphy talks about it in his book is that you have the conscious mind, which is pretty much like the executive. It's the one that makes the decisions, the decision maker. And what that conscious mind can do, and this is where choice is so important, is it can tell the subconscious mind what it wants. And the way in order for it to really do that, because there is a barrier between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, and it's there for a good reason. It's there to protect our brains and our minds so that things don't just infiltrate. It's almost like a filter. So the way to really get anything through to the subconscious mind, where you're almost like downloading software, is by repeating something over and over and over again. So that's one of the ways that you can do that. So you can actually, if you think about this, and I think a lot of us can relate to this, is when they talk about even people who lie, and that's fictional, they're giving a fictional story. If they lie over and over again, they can actually get to, even though they knew they were lying to begin with, they can start to get to the point where they can convince themselves that that's true. So that's the power of belief. You can actually convince your mind that something is true. And if that's the case, there's good news, because you can convince your mind things that you want to become true. And what happens with the mind is that the more you convince it, the more you put a certain type of information or focus into your mind will start to look for that. So have you ever been in a situation where either you had a roommate in college or a certain friend, and something that they did never bothered you in the beginning, but all of a sudden it started bothering you? And the more you focused on it, the more you felt like it bothered you, and you'd notice it and you'd be hyper-focused on it. That's the power of the mind. It just becomes something that you focus on. It comes into focus. Whereas somebody else, it doesn't even bother. And that's just a good proof on how our minds can impact our reality, is that you can have 10 different people, and 10 different people will look at it in 10 different ways, and their bodies will change. And they even see this with dissociative identity disorder, which is another term for multiple personality disorder, where a person can change their personalities and a completely different personality comes along. And with that, their bodies change. And it's really crazy. It's just their identity can impact their physiology. So their physiology changes, whereas one person or one personality, it's the same body, one personality can be sensitive or have an allergy to orange juice, and then the other personality comes along, they no longer are sensitive. They can actually have that and have no reaction. And that is really intriguing. Just to think about that. It really is such a good example of how our belief can impact our body. So when I work with people, whether it's online or in person, I really, really, really stress the fact that the body gets influenced by the mind. So it's important because it's an asset that we can either leave on the table or we can use unconsciously, because we're going to use it one way or the other. We can use it consciously or unconsciously. Unconsciously, an example of being unconscious about it, is to really cave into our fears, which are completely valid and normal. So it's not to say that you're never going to have fear or you shouldn't have fear. But if you allow yourself to put more of that energy into the fear, eventually what that's going to do is you're using that mental energy to focus and to visualize and imagine a fear over and over and over again. And then you're convincing your mind of that, and it limits you ultimately. And that's the truth. So what you could do is you can actually make it a conscious thing. And some of the ways that you can actually do this is by writing affirmations. Writing, just the act of writing, really gets things into your mind. It really etches whatever it is that you're writing over and over and over again into your subconscious mind. It does have a very powerful way to really get things in your subconscious mind, which is one of the reasons why it's a very powerful tool for studying. If people write things over and over again, by doing it, you're really getting it into your subconscious mind, getting it into your mind as information. So it's a great way to get information in. So writing affirmations, you're just basically taking affirmations and you're increasing its potency. So that's one way that you can do that. So writing down affirmations, you could just write down all the things that you want, whatever it is. So with affirmations, the key is to say it as it already is. And some of the ways that you can really, really increase the potency is by writing it down, but you can also visualize it. You could do all of this at once. Write it down every single day. You can write it down a bunch of times every single day. So like 10 times on a page, and also visualize it happening. Also say it, because when you're saying it, not only are you saying it, but you're hearing it. And the key thing is to say it as if it already happened. So, for example, I really want a red car. I'm just giving an example. So what I could say is, I'm so thankful that I have my red car. My red car was meant for me. However you want to say it, but say it as if you already have it. And really implement it. And you can bridge it. It doesn't have to go from one extreme to the next. Like if it's something that's really unrealistic, then you might want to create almost like little steps to get to that point that your mind will receive. So if it's something that's too way out right off the bat, your mind might be doubting it and there might be a little bit of resistance as you're doing it. So you might want to start with something that seems a little bit more reasonable or attainable in your mind so that your mind's on board. But if you do repeat it over and over and over again, somehow your mind will start to receive it. And if this feels very foreign to you, you might want to start off by saying affirmations work for me. Like really just use that as the affirmation. Affirmations work for me. I'm able to draw blessings into my life. And say draw blessings because you want to say or affirm that it's positive things that you're drawing into your life. So you can start out that way because that's an easier way to almost convince your mind so that your mind's okay, like this is something that I can take in. The easier it is for your mind to take in, the faster this will become inscripted into your mind. So that is a really powerful thing, but visualizations are also really powerful. And I've talked about this before. If you visualize a lemon and you really visualize it, like I used to do this in groups. If I was doing a workshop, I'd do this lemon exercise and just getting people to think about the lemon and describing it. Maybe 85%, not every single person, but 85% to maybe even 90% of the room salivated. So what's interesting about that is that you are getting a physiological response, like you're salivating, your body's actually responding to a thought. You're not salivating because you're looking at a lemon or anything. You're just thinking about it. Just thinking about it is actually getting your body to have a physiological response. So that is just one example of how just thinking about something and visualizing something can actually impact your body. And this has been shown with athletes that have visualized without practicing versus athletes that practiced versus athletes that were the control group and didn't do anything. And it's amazing, incredible how close to improvement the athletes that just imagined practicing got almost a percentage less than the people who actually practiced. And these are people who are not physically practicing and getting the training of getting their body stronger. I mean, think about it. It's phenomenal just to think about that the mind can be that powerful that it can impact somebody's athletic performance just by imagining. So your imagination's this asset that can either be in response to or reactive to your worries, anxieties, fears, because it's going to imagine, because that's just how the mind works. It's going to go ahead and find something to imagine. So you can either allow it to be reactive or you can start to guide it in the way that you want it to go. Now, again, that's not to say that we're not going to have fears. And to some extent, that is actually a survival thing. It is good sometimes to imagine things going wrong so that we can bypass them. Or if you're in a situation that might not be safe, you can imagine it not being safe and how to get yourself out of it, things like that. It is actually something that is a survival skill as well. So it's not to say that you have to be positive all the time and it's like rainbows and unicorns, not at all. But you can really work on trying to get your mind to focus on things that you want to bring into your life, or even just focus on what you want your body to do. So a lot of times when I have patients that I'm working with that are preparing for retrieval, I talk to them about visualizing blood flow to the ovaries and seeing their follicles increase and grow. It helps because it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt at all. You may not respond to it, and you may respond to it, and hopefully you do, but it won't hurt. That's for sure. There's nothing about visualizing that's going to hurt. So I've had patients look and pretend that they're seeing their belly growing with a pregnancy, patients that have been going through the fertility journey for over a year, even looking at like a pregnancy stick, seeing a positive pregnancy stick, really visualizing this while they're in their treatment rooms. And it's amazing, but it works. I've seen it work. I've seen it work myself. And another thing is, when we talk about the power of belief, I do want to mention is that I've had patients that have been told, and I say this a lot because it's really important, but told by practitioners and medical providers that they basically can't get pregnant on their own. They've had those messages, and their belief in their own body is what got them to seek out acupuncture or seek out more natural methods and means. And because they believed so strongly in their body, they eventually ended up getting pregnant. And a lot of times, not once, but twice. After they were told that they were perimenopausal, they felt a belief that their story was going to go in a different way. And so that belief is important to follow. And sometimes, again, it can end up being many different ways, and there is no right way or wrong way to become a parent. It could be through adoption as well. There's nothing wrong with anything, but something inside their subconscious mind or their gut told them that there was another way for them. So it's that belief that got them to continue on in a different way than what they were told. So belief is really, really powerful. It's really, really important. And I would also recommend starting out by just asking yourself, maybe for a good week, watching your belief systems, writing it down, journaling, and paying attention to what your belief system is now. I would even suggest doing this before starting anything, before even doing affirmations, just watching it, because just your awareness by itself could be so powerful. So I get really excited when it comes to the power of the mind, because I do feel like it is such a tremendous asset that all humans have, and it would be silly to not utilize. We work on supplements, we work on diet, we work on lifestyle, we work on so many different things, but our belief systems are huge, so, so important. So I hope this inspired you to at least give it a try, and give it a try for a couple of weeks and see if you feel different. So thank you for tuning in today, and I hope you have a beautiful day. So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.